Today I'm going to be ranking and breaking down Sean Strickland's toughest tests after he has become the new champion of the 185-pound division. I never thought I would say those words again, but it feels very sweet to say it. But the only two people I'm not going to include in this one, they're going to be Fluffy Hernandez and Khamzat Chimaev. We've just seen those fights. I don't need to break those down again. But in my opinion, the easiest matchup for Sean Strickland in the middleweight division, it's Christian Leroy Duncan. Now, I haven't included all 15 of the ranked middleweights, but out of the ones in this video today, CLD, sadly, he is going to be the lowest on the list. I think he would get TKO'd in round 2. I would be worried for about 3 minutes of the fight, because we have seen in the past that Sean Strickland got smoked out cold by Alessio Zaleski dos Santos by a wheel kick. And I think that CLD, coming into this sort of fight, he would know that his only way to win is going to be the spin. So he's going to go for the spinning back fist, spinning elbow, spinning wheel kick. And once he's tried all 3 of those moves at least 3 times each, he's going to know that he's absolutely cooked and he's got no chance at all to beat Sean Strickland after those 3 minutes. Just because on the feet, we've seen time and time again that Christian Leroy Duncan, he really struggles with the normal stuff. He struggles with just having a clean jab and a nice low kick. Even though he's got both of those things, he doesn't use them in a general sense, and it's not going to be... I could see Strickland finding the timing and being able to move him backwards constantly, and that's the thing about Christian Leroy Duncan. He does move back a lot, and when Strickland gets into a groove of moving forward, teeping, jabbing, checking the low kicks, he sort of gets into a groove and you can't really take him out of that. So I think that especially... pardon me, but especially if Sean Strickland wrestles back early, or he wrestles early and he puts the pressure on early, I think he's going to break down Christian Leroy Duncan by the second round and have a pretty, I think it would be early second round TKO. Now, the next easiest opponent for Sean Strickland, it's going to be Joe Pyfer. Now, whilst it lasts, it would be a very fun fight between the two, and I would be worried. I would be worried early, for Sean Strickland, because the way that he sort of defends, he does all of the parrying, all of the slipping his head on the outside, does the little shoulder roll as well. But against Pyfer, one other defense that Strickland has is where he just rears back and he flicks both of his arms out there. And he sort of just creates traffic, so it's really difficult to find your way through the hands. And early on, I could see Pyfer landing a massive shot on him and finishing him. But I just don't think it would happen. Upon when Strickland rears back, I could see sort of the overhand right landing for Joe Pyfer, but all of the straight shots and all of the conventional stuff that Pyfer throws, Strickland's going to be able to read that like a book, and Pyfer's going to be whiffing early on. And if you imagine the Israel Adesanya versus Joe Pyfer fight, a guy who's not nearly as fast, nearly as clean, nearly as slick at this point in his career as Sean Strickland, in that second round when Pyfer wasn't really having too much success, before the finishing sequence happened, there was a moment there where it did really look like he was breaking. And again, Sean Strickland, if he has that second round, Sean's not going to do the same thing that Izzy did. Izzy almost gritted down and stayed in the pocket for way too long, even though he was leg kicking nicely at range. Sean Strickland will stay on the outside, and even if he feels that Joe Pyfer's breaking in moments, he's just going to jab at range still. He's going to break you down slower. I think in that second round, if you see the same Joe Pyfer as you saw against Izzy, I think that Sean Strickland finishes him that round. He's going to keep jabbing and popping him in the face. And Joe Pyfer, we saw in the Jack Hermansson fight, he can get frustrated and start overthrowing and not really performing to his abilities. And if that version of Pyfer shows up especially, Sean Strickland's going to have his way with him. And another thing with Pyfer is that his head movement is deceptively bad. He would get busted up really quickly with the jab. And he's not the guy to slip outside something and land a massive counter over the top. The teep kicks as well for Sean Strickland against a guy like Joe Pyfer. He doesn't really move around too much, encroaches forward. That teep kick would be open for him the entire time. Now, the next most difficult fight, this is a weird one to put on the list, but I do believe this guy is coming up to the middleweight division. It's Kamaru Usman. And now, I think Kamaru Usman would last a little bit longer than guys like Joe Pyfer or guys like I was about to say Fluffy Hernandez, but guys like Christian Leroy Duncan. I think that Kamaru Usman, this fight would actually look similar to the Fluffy Hernandez. Early on, I think that Usman might be able to get a takedown or two. And maybe even prime Usman against this version of Strickland would have a better chance. But early on, after a couple of takedowns with no control really from Usman, I think that Strickland's going to start getting back up. He's going to start wearing on him with the damage. And old Kamaru Usman, he could capitalize with the lighter man's skill. He would be much better on the feet, the old version. He would be able to snap up his jab back. He used to land some decent-ish combinations, like 2-3-piece combinations, but now he does just one shot at a time. But this version of Kamaru Usman, especially the guy that we saw against Joaquin Buckley, on the feet, he is just food for Sean Strickland. The way that he wings shots nowadays, he looks at the floor, and then he just throws over his head. He swings wild. Like, if you remember the last 5 seconds of the Khamzat Chimaev fight, that is now how Kamaru Usman strikes, and that's the only way he strikes. And even off of the back foot, when Strickland sort of like, when Strickland also does the same thing of looking at the floor throwing hooks, he is going to do better in that sort of scrap. He's a little bit faster. He's used to throwing those scrappy hooks. And as soon as Kamaru Usman realizes that he's absolutely cooked on the feet, he's going to have to shoot bad takedowns. And the takedown from Strickland's going to prevail too early. And I could see up against the cage getting a nice finish, really similar to the Hernandez one, just taking out the body shots. Sort of, if you remember the finishing sequence where he's just wailing hooks up against the cage, that would be how Kamaru Usman would get finished by Strickland in their rematch. Now, the next most difficult fight, only marginally more difficult than this one. It's Sean Strickland versus Gregory Rodrigues. Now, this fight, it genuinely worries me more than most of the other ones because Gregory is a really, really good grappler and he's got crazy power and insane explosive ability. But the weakness for Gregory Rodrigues, it's always in the cardio, it's always in the chin. And that means that Gregory has to be broken down by like the jabs and the teeps of Sean Strickland, which is absolutely possible, but I would be really worried about that counter right hand killing Sean, because we know how many times Sean Strickland's throwing out a jab. He doesn't have a lazy jab. That's not how Strickland works. But with that type of jab, I do believe that like you throw in enough, someone's going to counter over the top. And RoboCop is the guy that just to sleep Sean Strickland in that aspect. But I don't see it happening. I think RoboCop, he wings a little bit too wild. He doesn't have the greatest setups for his right hand as well. And I think that Strickland, he would know how much danger he's in early. He would stay really safe early. And then late round 2, early round 3, he would turn up the pace. And Gregory Rodrigues, similar to Joe Pyfer, he's got no head movement at all. And he would eat about 1,000 jabs throughout the fight. And he would break later in the fight and quit, similar to the Jared Cannonier fight. Although Gregory wouldn't have gotten slammed with a massive elbow in the 3rd round against Sean Strickland, I think that Strickland would be able to finish it earlier because he wouldn't hurt him as bad as Cannonier did, but he wouldn't get hurt for the whole 1st round. He would land some nice shots. And what I can just picture is Gregory Rodrigues wading into punches. You know how he throws himself into shots and just eating jabs straight on the chin. And you'd see Gregory Rodrigues maybe in round 2, he's starting to get busted up bad. Maybe he's got a broken jaw, hanging the jaw down. He's got some busted up on the eyebrow. He's got some swelling. Maybe the cut on in between his eyebrows have opened. And then he would I think Sean Strickland would smell blood in the late 3rd round, land a couple of nasty teeps as well. And then he would just come in with a straight 1-2, maybe hurt Gregory, but not really like to the point where it's jelly legging him, but I think he goes down to the Anthony Smith position, and Sean Strickland just lands some nasty ground and pound to finish him off. Now, the next most difficult fighter that Sean Strickland could come up against, it's Brendan Allen. And this is where it gets interesting, as I know that they both fought earlier in Allen's career, but both of them have made massive improvements. I think the first 2 rounds, though, would be really tough for both guys, because Brendan Allen, he is a deceptively good striker, and he blends it nicely with the wrestling, especially early. And he is really experienced. He's been in every position you could ask for in a fight. He's been dropped, he's been rocked, he's been hurt, he's had his back taken, he's taken someone back. He's been mounted, he's had mount. Every position Brendan Allen's been in. But I think that Strickland will be able to find his groove against him. Because the thing is about Brendan Allen, you have to bet on this every fight. His decision-making is consistently really awful, and especially against a guy like Strickland, and especially grapplers in general, you cannot be making those mistakes. As if like Allen leaps himself off the back, there's so much effort that he's put out for literally no result. And Allen's the type of guys that will keep teeping, and the knees will work against him, and all of these stuff will work against Brendan Allen. And even in the first 2 rounds, if Strickland loses those ones, you know that he's just going to have a snowball effect. You know the teeps are going to add up, and you know that Brendan Allen's going to be less slick as the fight goes along. And that's when, as the fight goes along as well, that's when Brendan Allen frantically goes for takedowns, like he did in the 3rd round of the Nassourdine Imavov fight. And I think that would happen in this case as well. Now, moving on to the next one, it is Sean Strickland versus Caio Borralho. Now, this one is higher than Allen, not necessarily on the list. It's not necessarily higher on the list because Brendan Allen is like much worse, and he's not going to have any success against him. I actually think he would do better in moments of the fight, but I think that Borralho would last and make it to a decision, whereas I think Brendan Allen would get finished in round 4 or so. Whereas Borralho, he's got a really good chin. I just think on the feet, though, and on the ground, it's going to be less competitive. Like, he's not going to have the moments that Brendan Allen do, winning 2 rounds. Because Borralho's whole game is jab, leg kick, takedown. And everything that he does, Strickland does it better. And although we saw it with Khamzat, that the jab still can work against Strickland, especially when you jab with him, I just think that for 5 straight rounds, if that's your only game plan, you're not going to be able to execute it as well as Khamzat did. Khamzat executed it well because Strickland has to be worried about the takedowns. He's going to be tired from all the wrestling defense as well. And against Borralho, Sean Strickland's going to be able to start finding his groove, finding his timing. He's not going to have strong, heavy takedowns shot on him that he has to defend well. And then, if you watched in the Dorito versus Caio Borralho fight, you see that Borralho fights with basically in the entire fight with his hands at his waist, with no head movement. And against Sean Strickland, you cannot do that. Borralho's not the pull counter type guy with fast movements. So I don't know why he runs this game of his hands being below his waist. And it'll let Strickland get into a rhythm, get comfortable, and start outstriking him. And maybe Borralho, due to training with Strickland at one point, can craft up in some moments, but I just see a 50-45, 49-46 decision for Strickland here. Now, the next most difficult fight, and the second most difficult fight in the middleweight division for Sean Strickland, I think it's the Nassourdine Imavov rematch. It's a very interesting rematch because both have grown massively since their last fight. Many may not agree with me though, but I think Imavov has grown more since their last fight. He has gotten better with the wrestling. He's got much faster hands. He throws much better in combinations, and he throws to the body a lot more as well. And he's throwing way more sting on his shots. He's stepping through with combinations, and he's just being a lot more crafty with his punches as well. And he is actually the only guy on the list that I would think could counter and like veer off the center line and land a nice shot while Sean Strickland's jabbing, maybe a pull counter here and there. His issue in this fight will be the cardio, and it's going to be the grappling defense. In some fights, we've seen Imavov fade, and although he's making improvements on that, he went 5 straight rounds with Borralho really well. Borralho also, he does have good cardio, but he doesn't press a pace like Sean Strickland does. And Imavov, I think we saw this when Strickland was coming in on 5 days' notice. He was able to grapple well with Imavov. And if guys like Brendan Allen are dominating you for a round, I think Sean Strickland's going to be able to deal with your offensive grappling and defensively grapple against you. And that would be a good idea for Strickland here. And Strickland, he's just a very good fighter all around. And for Imavov, his best chance is in the hands. He's got to counter Strickland at one moment. He's got to outstrike him for 5 rounds. He's got to outpoint him. And I don't see that happening. Everything that Imavov does, Strickland does it better. apart from like the pull counters and like some of the body shots as well. But with the speed of his hands, they're both about the same. I will give the edge to Imavov, but the way that Sean Strickland uses his footwork, it's better than the way that Imavov does his. The body shots of Strickland, actually, with all the teeps, they do work, and they worked on Imavov in their first fight. And I just see Strickland consistently being able to outdo him to like 48, 47, 49, 46 decisions here. Now, the hardest fight for Sean Strickland, a lot of people may disagree with this one after the recent win for Sean Strickland, but it's going to be Dricus Du Plessis, and I think he loses this one as well. Only fight in the division, I think he loses. And it's because I think Dricus has Sean's number. Now, there are elements to the game that Strickland could change to make it fall back into his favor. And the first fight, razor close. Second fight, not so much, but actually, at the time of watching the first fight, I gave it to Dricus. Upon rewatch, I gave it to Sean. But you could give it either way, and I wouldn't be annoyed at all. But the reason why I would say that Dricus is taking the cake on this one is his striking style is built for a guy like Strickland. I was talking about how Strickland veers off and sort of just like throws his arms out there and sometimes gets caught over the top. That is Dricus's specialty. His specialty is to run forward, miss two punches, land the third, over the top of your jab, or over the top of Strickland rearing out like this. And that is always going to be a struggle for Strickland. Strickland can't change his style. That's how he's been fighting forever. He's always reared back, stuck his hands out, and used that as defense. And Dricus Du Plessis is not the guy that you can do that to. Whether it's a head kick at the end of the combinations, or whether it's a looping punch over the top, everything that he throws is looping. Even his straight shots loop somehow. You watch him throw a 1-2, and it's somehow like a 1-2. Like it's everything is coming over the top. And for Sean Strickland, that's always going to be a trouble for him. Now, the only way I could see him, not the only, but one of the biggest ways I could see him adjusting is going to be throwing more of his own leg kicks. I know Dricus throws a lot of effective leg kicks and did so against Sean, but Sean should do some back as well. Slow down the movement, slow down the explosiveness of the blitz of Dricus Du Plessis. And he should also offensively wrestle against Dricus. In the first and second fight, the only guy wrestling was Dricus. And we saw in the Khamzat fight, we saw night and day the difference in wrestling. Dricus was able to take down Sean, but Sean got back up so unbelievably fast. And it worked for Dricus because it was able to open up different options that he had in the striking, because he would go for the takedown and then Sean's worrying about that takedown, and with his style leads him to backing up to the cage and getting taken down. So for Dricus, that ended up working out really well for him, shooting the takedowns himself. But for Strickland, he can cook the clock in moments. If he's in a pickle at any moment, get Dricus down. Dricus' style, I'm going to compare it to Joaquin Buckley, where they're so explosive that they're always going to get taken down. We've seen Dricus horrendous takedown defense forever, especially if you shoot whilst he's throwing a strike, which Khamzat did very well. And Strickland could follow a similar game plan just without the smudge. And if Dricus is that worried about getting taken down, he isn't going to be able to work as well on the feet, and I could see it being close. I think that Sean Strickland would wrestle in this fight if they had a rematch, and I think it would be a razor close fight between the two of them. I think it would be razor close, very similar to their first fight. But they would give it to Dricus from winning the way that Sean did. I think you're seeing nowadays Sean's nose is breaking real fast. And Dricus, I think he's going to be able to break it every single time they fight now. Forever. If they fight 10 more times, I think that Dricus breaks his nose 10 more times. And I think that Strickland would be the guy, like, minorly out. He would be outpointing him in moments, but he would also be the guy getting the takedowns. But I think that Dricus would do more of the damage still. He's still going to be able to land those shots over the top. Sean doesn't have the control of Khamzat. And Dricus will be able to get up, unlike his abilities of getting up against Khamzat. And I think that Dricus would win a 48-47 split decision like their first fight. I really do. Although he 50-45'd him in the next one, I think he's much better. It's tough to say that. Let me know what you think, who you think is the toughest opponent for Sean Strickland. Now, let me just tell you really quickly where I would put Khamzat Chimaev. I think Khamzat would be just after Nassourdine Imavov, because I think it's always going to be a 50-50 fight between Sean and Khamzat. But just before Dricus, I think that Dricus has Sean's number before Khamzat. And then for Fluffy, I think that he would make it around to Brendan Allen level. I think Fluffy and Brendan Allen are very similar levels in general. Their fight was so unbelievably close. Let me know what you think of my list in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and a comment, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.